This is Jon Bailey, the epic voice guy, and I am A/N, adjective, Star Wars fan.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to episode number 195 of Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer, and along with my co-host, Nick Milkey, we bring you the conversations with the people behind the Star Wars fandom. Since 2019, we've had the privilege of speaking to Oscar winners, Emmy winners, New York Times bestsellers, celebrity superfans, and social media voices, capturing that magic moment when Star Wars fans meet. And this week, we are speaking to a gentleman you've definitely heard, but may never heard of. I had the good fortune to sit down with Mr. Jon Bailey, also known as the Epic Voice Guy. You've heard him as the voice of Honest Trailers and How It Should Have Ended on YouTube. You've heard him as the voice of Shockwave in the movie Bumblebee, and as Optimus Prime in some of the Transformers video games. You've also heard him and had no idea it was him when you've seen movies, trailers, and commercials featuring actors like Ryan Reynolds and Tamora Morrison and Chris Hemsworth, and hundreds of others that he's done ADR work for. And in this episode, he tells us about doing work for Star Wars, his bucket list work on Transformers, and how being a part of Honest Trailers impacts how he watches movies. But before we get started, I wanted to let you know about a handful of changes to the shows and the schedules as we kick off 2024. We're really excited to share that if you're listening to this on Thursday, tonight, January 11th, we are premiering a brand new show on our YouTube channel called ATG Live. Every Thursday at 8 p.m. East, Nick and I will talk about the Star Wars news of the week. Plus, each episode will feature a special guest. And tonight, we are pleased and privileged to bring you Christina Ariel from the StarWars.com High Republic show and the fan stage at Star Wars Celebration. We'll also be featuring your comments in the chat, as well as playing back your voicemails. And speaking of which, we would love to hear from you. Call our voicemail line anytime at 540-321-1501. Leave us your Star Wars hot take, comments on this show or ATG Live, thoughts on anything happening in the world of Star Wars, or, just say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Put our hotline number in your phone and call us whenever the mood strikes. That's 504-321-1501, 504-321-1501. You can also follow this show and engage with us on social media. Look for us on Twitter at ATGcast, and everywhere else you can find us at the SSW Network. Follow us today and be part of the conversation. And finally, if you'd like to be part of the show in the live virtual studio audience when we record episodes of Around the Galaxy or Podcast of the Wills with our celebrity guests, like we did this week, head on over to the SSWnetwork.com and click Join SSWN. For as little as $3 a month, you can support your favorite Star Wars creators. You can earn free swag, get exclusive discounts on merch, plus get the members-only link to be part of the conversation when we record Around the Galaxy and Podcast of the Wills. And now, without further ado, our conversation with Jon Bailey after these messages. We are talking to Jon Bailey, the Epic Voice Guy. Jon, how are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am the son of Zeus. I fell from a mountain, and
Before time began, there was Jon.
No, I was a nerd kid like everybody else, and I got into voiceover professionally totally by accident. It was something I was always interested in when I was growing up, and I didn't think of it as a job. We watched cartoons and things like Star Wars, where the voice of Yoda, and we were just like captivated with voices. And I've always been an audiophile since I was a little kid, but I didn't know it was a job, And it's kind of cool because when I did first get on, I through a pop-up ad on MySpace of all places, there was a local studio in Memphis, Tennessee, which I didn't think we had anything like that around. And they really liked me, like right off the bat. They showed them what I could do. And one of my very first jobs was Star Wars, because it was It was a bittersweet phone call, and it should have been an amazing phone call because I do love Star Wars. It's such a freaking great franchise. I always find the good in things, regardless of what the haters have to say out there. There's just way too much haterade. I've just been the kid that's like, look, I'm just happy they're still making Star Wars stuff. I'm still happy that, and it looks cooler than the stuff I grew up with. So you know what I mean? I find the positive in those things. But like when they call, because I had done a Transformers audition around the same time that I did a Star Wars audition. And if anybody hasn't noticed, I'm a huge Transformers fan. And so she called, she's like, hey, I just want to let you know, you booked the Transformers job. I'm like, what? Freaking Transformers? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I meant the Star Wars job. I'm like, oh, cool. Star Wars. Yay. Freaking Star Wars. I guess I'll go do that job now. And I should have been ecstatic, but she kind of led with Transformers and she just pulled the rug out from underneath me. So my first gig, I was the voice of Captain Rex for some toys and some commercials. So when Clone Wars was at the height, that's kind of how I learned about some of how the industry works, because D. Bradley Baker is the voice of Captain Rex as well as all the clones. And, but he's only the voice for the AAA video game titles. If you don't know what a AAA game is, you know what a AAA game is. You're playing them probably. If it's on Steam, it's probably not a AAA game. Let's put it that way.
Right. If you can buy it in physical form, it's more likely to be a AAA game.
Yeah. So it just means a big main title that's across all platforms. So it's like AAA titles and the actual animated series and movies. That was the main actors. And actresses. Now they just call them all actors, but back in my day, they called them actors and actresses. Hadn't even that long ago. And so I found out that the voices for toys, the voices for the commercials, everything that was like under those three things were voiced by sound-alikes. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. It was a legal thing that they didn't do. So I was D. Bradley Baker's sound-alike for Captain Rex and for a lot of the toy campaign. It was at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 commercials that were all national spots. And it was just like, on the Iceland of such and such, we scrapped those clankers. It was just all, voiceover, whatever. And, cool. It was really cool. It was a cool toy commercial. It was the kind of toy commercial that I was like, in my imagination, that's how cool it looked whenever I was playing with action figures. And then that kind of, and I auditioned also for Anakin Skywalker for the voice of the toys, but they didn't say what it was for. They just gave us a list of names. I actually have that toy in the other room. They gave a list of just names. It wasn't even General Grievous or Captain Rex. It was just Grievous Rex. And then I get in the studio like, okay, so this is for a foreign toy that's outside of the U.S. So this will be the international version of this toy. So we can't use any words that can be translated into English. So only names. So you will be happy to know that the word Jedi is an international word.
Ah, very nice.
That was the only one we could use. Everything else had to be Ahsoka, R2, Rex, Grievous. It's just, I had to literally act without saying anything. It was this weird job. It was so fun. It was so weird. And then I got to be Captain Rex for a few toys as well. They're the clone trooper, like the half shell helmet that's got like 20 something phrases in it, as well as the Republic attack shuttle, which was like the big toy that year for Star Wars for Christmas. Yeah. I was one of 3 clone voices in that. And then there was a really cool Target exclusive pack with the DVD in it. And I was the voice of Rex giving a warning for all the bounty hunter set. So there was little stuff like that. I got to do a lot of that very early on, which I thought was amazing, kind of start my career off. And then crickets for 15 years. But most recently, I did some cool stuff that I just can't disclose, but I got to do some sound-alike work for 3PO and Mandalorian. This is the way. Oh, wow. That was pretty cool. Yeah. Can't talk about it, though. Sorry. The force may be strong, but NDAs are stronger.
Well, there's a surprisingly high number of our guests who are like, there's things I want to tell you, but I can't. I've signed a piece of paper.
I got to wait years for some of this stuff. And even with stuff like the stuff I work on, I know already, like, it's just a sound like, it's just like filling in, but I get to know all the cool nerd stuff before you do. It also sucks though, because then I can't say anything about it. What good's bragging when you can't even talk about it?
That's always the rough part, right? When you see the stuff and you're like, no,
exactly.
I know. So you saw Star Wars when you were a kid. What was some of your earliest Star Wars memories?
I didn't see the original trilogy in order. We did not go to the movie theaters. So I saw Empire Strikes Back first it came on NBC, and it was the Friday night movie of the week, that kind of thing. And it was like obviously censored for TV, so parts of it were cut. And I remember thinking I don't like Star Wars because it had a sad ending. I thought everything else about it was cool, but I was like, what? The good guys lose?
Right.
What the, and then I watched Return of the Jedi and I loved it because the good guys won.
Right.
And then I found out about New Hope and I was like, this is a lot like the Return of the Jedi. I like Return of the Jedi better. So because I watched them out of order, I'm the one weirdo that likes Return of the Jedi better than New Hope. And my only other memory is my brother and I going to see Wing Commander just to see the Phantom Menace trailer. And that moron made me late. And all I got to see was Darth Vader's mask at the end. And and it was like, and that Darth Vader's not even in Phantom Menace, guys. That was a complete rug pull.
Yeah, I feel like that's false advertising. I think
that was very much all the trailers for Phantom Menace were false advertising. I'll be honest. The only honest trailer was the one that we made.
Was the honest trailer.
Exactly.
So what came first for you? You said that the chicken. The chicken.
Sorry,
it's always so. Were you doing impressions first, or did you find that you had a movie type voice first when you were a kid? Like what?
I didn't even know about the trailer thing until I was a teenager. I started off obviously just doing impressions. Now there's a difference between impressions and sound-alikes.
Yes,
a lot of people don't understand the difference, but it's like a caricature you get at a flea market or carnival or something. Overly exaggerated cartoon head, giant features, whatever. That's an impression. What I do is like taking a photo and putting on a photocopier or a printer, and pushing a button, and it makes a copy. Kids don't know what a copy machine is.
There's glass and light. It's very interesting.
Yes, it's got lasers inside. It's a laser box that prints out things called paper. We murdered millions of trees to make this. So yeah, it's like just taking a copy of it. You're trying to make it as close to the original. It's almost like tracing over it, as opposed to drawing exactly. Like if somebody does artwork of Star Wars, for example, and they do a giant head pop figure style Boba Fett, whatever. Well, we know it's Boba Fett, but if you want to do it like exactly the way he looks in the show, but you drew it that way, that's more like what I do. And visually, what I will say is like somebody that does Alex Ross type art detail. Would be like what a voiceover artist does when they voice match. Like it needs to be so freaking good that people have no idea it was even me or anybody else. It has to be like there was no sound alike at all. It was just that guy or that person.
Right. Now you've done sound alikes for I guess Ryan Reynolds and many others.
So many. You have to wear your brown pants.
So how did you for me? So it was very interesting as I was doing research and preparing to talk to you. Because again, as I said, I know you as the movie guy, right? That's where I first heard about you.
I like to say I'm the guy that nobody's heard, but everybody's heard of.
Right. So I was surprised that you. I mean,
everybody's heard, nobody's heard of. There we go.
There you go. And I think that what's so interesting is you have that deep voice, that very distinctive deep voice. And then when I read and found all the Ryan Reynolds stuff that you did, I was like, wait a second, how does that? But and that was when I started to dig in and learn more about the ADR stuff that you do. So how does that is there a particular set of voices that somebody's like, we need a John C. Reilly let's call, is there a list somewhere? Like, how does that whole thing work?
Listen to me very carefully. I have a very particular set of voices. There's a red phone behind the back cave, and they ring it up, and they're like, Powerpuff Girls, we need a sound alike ASAP. It kind of is that way. It really is. They call it the golden chain. There's a reason why there's a booth in my bedroom. I'm not really allowed to leave. They need this stuff back so fast, and that's the main reason why they use sound alikes, because celebrities are extremely busy. Their schedules are nuts. I mean, they are the ones that I end up filling in for are probably overseas in Europe or, anywhere other than where they need to be to record something even halfway good quality. Right. Or it's like very early in the film and it's just storyboards and it's not even an animatic yet. So it's just like they have temporary. If you go to Hollywood ever, and you start getting these free screenings. And there's a lot of them out there. You wait in line forever and they let you see a movie early. There's a lot of films where it's like, this film is not finished. The complete edit will be this and this. You might hear this and see this. And the finished version, it will be like this. You may also hear voices that don't sound like. That's the reason why, because ADR people do that stuff early on in the production. And we also do the background voices, the looping. So any of the crowd work, the extra people that you see on screen. And it's a very big umbrella because it doesn't just cover films. It covers television shows. It covers stuff that's dubbed into English from other countries. Netflix bought a ton of foreign content and they had to dub all that in English. So I've done a lot of that as well. Anime is also ADR, dubbing over anything that's already pre-done and you're dubbing over it. Normal animation, like the way American animation is done, they record the voices first. And they have just outlines and maybe sketches and storybook stuff or storyboard stuff. And that's it. There's no like fully animated thing yet. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. ADR is a very all-encompassing thing that covers a lot of different stuff. There's even movie trailers. For example, when they have a trailer for one that I worked on, just a random off the top of my head, Snow White and the Huntsman. There was a part where Chris Hemsworth says a thing, but in the movie, they never fully explain. It's explained in the film, but he doesn't say, and it's like, it doesn't make sense in the trailer unless you add on this. And it's like, so the original line was, "Why didn't you tell me?" But without context, you have no idea. Why didn't you tell me what? So I had to change it to, "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" And I had to do it so good that it starts off with his mouth moving and my voice, and then it blends together where you have no idea that he never has said that. And you watch the film and you're like, "Oh, didn't they say this in the movie trailer though?" That's one of those reasons why. So it's to explain things. Sometimes there'll be narration for the Seventh Son. I think I had to do a long, big intro for the Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, or was it the Giver? I can't tell. They're all the same. And there was a whole voiceover thing that was never in the film. That was just in the trailer. I did stuff like that. So it's a lot of different types of jobs. And I'm just happen to be really good at it. They literally send me, like you said, they send me an audition. They say, "Hey, we've got literally an hour, sometimes less. Can you get this done? Get it back ASAP." And I'll do my best to match it as good as I can, ship it off if they like it. Sometimes they just use it straight from the audition. Sometimes they'll have me do a directed session. Sometimes as fast as that day.
Have you ever gotten one and you're like, "That's a voice I can't do. I'd love to do it."
Well, of course. There's always ones that you're just like, Kevin Costner, I think, is one that I have trouble with. Yeah. Because he's just kind of normal. He has an accent, like a New England accent, but there's not a lot there to hold on to. And I book a few of those that are kind of like normal voices. Like Ryan Reynolds is pretty much normal voice, but I hacked out what little bit that makes his voice unique. Same thing for like Chris Pratt. I never thought I'd book that one. Jeff Bridges, never thought I'd book that one. I booked them. I just I revoiced engineered them from something that I knew I could do until I got to where it sounded like the real thing. And then they're like, "Oh, that sounds just like him. I'll just do that." I'm like, "Okay, do you say so?" I've even booked some that I know I did bad at, and yet they kept it in and people never noticed and didn't complain. For example, did you know that some of the stuff on the phone in Bullet Train is not Brad Pitt? I never thought I could book Brad Pitt in a million years because his voice is too freaking hard. The only person I've seen come close is Ross Marquand, who is the voice of Red Skull, and he's done some other voice work, but he's a very good sound-alike guy. He does a lot of ADR as well. He was Aaron in Walking Dead. A lot of people know him for that.
Right. Now, have you done on-screen work as well? A
little bit. I don't pursue it because, man, just going to an audition takes a whole dang day. Yeah. And I can do 20 of those at home and not change my clothes. I can do it in my underwear if I want. I can do it naked if I want to. How are you guys going to know unless you're hacking my mainframe, bro? If I want to let it hang, I'm going to let the force hang out, bro.
Right, next time you hear Epic Voice, I want everybody from now on, next time you hear Epic Voice guy somewhere, he just imagine he's not.
Imagine me naked in the booth, just sweating my balls off. Just a big pile of nasty sweat.
What are some of your favorite roles that you've had and some of the favorite voiceovers or ADR roles that you've done?
My name is Optimus Prime.
I'm 20 plus voices in multiple Transformers things, but the all-time, to this day, I have yet to top it because they're my two favorite characters in all of Transformers. But I was Shockwave and Soundwave in Bumblebee movie, and even though they don't have a lot of screen time, they look so freaking good and they sound amazing, and it's me. And that's the crazy part. It doesn't just sound great because it sounds great. It sounds great, and it's me. Right. Which that usually doesn't happen very often. Most people don't. You know, that's really cool, but it's like somebody else's voice.
Well, tell me a little bit about that because like Transformers, that was the cartoon. Like we knew that as kids, so the characters were the voices as much as Mark Hamill was Luke Skywalker. The voice, and boy, you're gonna kill me. Why can't I think of the guy's name? Who does Optimus Prime from?
Oh, Peter Cullen.
Right, Peter Cullen. He just got that Lifetime Emmy, and I should have remembered his name. But like,
was it an Emmy?
I think it was a Lifetime
Achievement Award, but I don't remember
I don't know
which one. I don't know. I think it's a Hollywood Science of Arts and something. I don't know. He won something. He won a Lifetime Achievement Award from somebody.
Right. And he earned it, damn it. But so now you're in now. So you grew up with Transformers. You got the Transformers hat on. You're a huge Transformers fan. And now, like you said, you're watching Transformers and it's you. Like, how does that make you like, that's like if I get the opportunity to do a voice for, a clone or something, which of course I can't do because I don't have that skill set at all. But like, how does that feel? Tell me about the first time you saw it and when you booked that gig.
That's a long story that I won't take up the whole podcast with, but I got the audition for it and I was like, hey, I'm not doing Optimus Prime's voice unless Peter Cullen is just not going to do it. If he's unable and unwilling, then yeah. But so they said, okay, well, let us check. And they went and they checked and they came back and there's like, he can't and won't / I won't go into details because I'm not here to make him look bad. Sure. And I'm like, well, if he's not going to do it, then I will, because I would rather it be me than some intern going Optimus Prime's here. So I booked three very brief sessions. It was like 3 in and out because there wasn't a lot of dialogue, but they kept changing the dialogue and they were like, it's a lot easier to do it this way. And we finalize it, then Peter will come in. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I'm basically Peter Cullen's understudy. That's freaking amazing. Yeah. So while I'm there for those sessions, I get to see David Soboleff come in to do Blitzwing, and then Greta Lyle's there and Steve Bloomer there to do Wheeljack and to do RC. And it's just really surreal, that I'm here for this thing. And then the last session I was there for, the week before I had auditions for several Transformers characters. They try to hide them, but I was like, I know who these guys are. I'm like, and then I got the auditions again. I'm like, I just did these though. And they were like, oh, it's some confusion. They went through a different company and now we're doing them again. I'm like, okay. So I did them again and then nothing. So I'm like, oh, well, at least I tried. I can sleep at night. And while I was at the session, basically all those, I'm sorry for everybody out there who did those auditions too. They didn't listen to any of them because when we got there, they're like, hey, we have a list of ancillary characters. Can you just write down which ones you've booked before? And of course, I do them all, but I hadn't booked them before. Now I can say, but then I couldn't. And Steve Bloom's there, who's worked on tons of freaking Transformers stuff. And he's like, done it, haven't done. They left me like 2 characters. I'm like, yay. And one of them actually got cut. In fact, I think both of them may have been cut. Because it was there was 3 of them. It was Ratchet, Brawn, and Ironhide. And Ironhide and Ratchet got cut for their lines anyway. Ratchet may have had that. I can't remember now which one of them actually said something. Anyway, so I did those 2, and I was like, and before I left, I was like, would you mind if I read for some of these other characters? Because I've been doing Transformers for a long freaking time, and I'm really good at these. He said, you want exact sound alikes from the original cartoon. And literally, I've been working on that for 30 years. So I started going through them, and Travis Knight, I didn't even know it was Travis Knight. I just thought it was the guy that was working at Paramount at the time because I didn't look him up. He's not like M. Night Shyamalan or George Lucas, so you don't know what he looks like off the top of my head. You don't see Travis Knight today did such and such. Never seen it. Correct. So he's like, dude, you're blowing my mind, man. You sound just freaking like him. I was like, dude, and I started talking to him about the different voices and about some of the history, where they came up with the voices for it. And he was like, man, you really know your stuff. I'm like, dude, I researched thoroughly for this role and these roles. And then I heard later on during a session I was working at 6 Underground, and while I was at Michael Bay's studio, the engineer was like, hey, I worked with you on Bumblebee. You probably didn't see me because I was behind the glass. Oh, cool, nice to meet you. And he's like, you know that Peter Cullen heard your voice, right? I'm like, uh-oh, he didn't tell him who it was. I don't want to get the guy mad. I'm just filling in. He's like, well, he came in and they played the temp track for him, and he goes, uh-oh. Or no, he goes, he said, what was that? And then Travis Knight says, it was good, right? And he turns and goes, uh-oh. And that was the whole interaction. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's not too bad, So anyways, he said when they were looking for he was just letting me know how I got the job. You never get to hear these stories. So it was kind of cool that I got to find this out. And he's like, so we were going through the characters, and he said, what about Shockwave and Soundwave? And so I looked at him and was like, it's gotta be Jon Bailey though, right? I mean, and he looked at me, he's like, yeah, it's gotta be. Like, who else could it be? It's gotta be Jon. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that I owe both of those guys my favorite 2 roles and all of that. And it was this on-screen credit, like at the end, that was just really cool. But it checked off such a huge bucket list for me because I never wanted to replace Peter Cullen. Right. I'm happy being his understudy, but I never wanted to be Optimus Prime and things. I'm happy to be things that, he can't own. Like there's some things he won't do, like mobile games and stuff that he's like, that's not worth my time. Or he's just not in poor health for or whatever. There's always a reason, but I'm always like, I'm double checking to make sure he can or won't before I'm even going to submit. Right. But to be able to do that and be like, oh, that's awesome. But to be able to be other Transformers, my favorite 2, by the way, but to be other Transformers alongside Optimus Prime, voiced by Peter Cullen, was like a childhood dream. Always. not to replace him, but to work on something with him. And there's a scene where literally me, him, me. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to top that.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And again, I mean, clearly it's funny. I think I feel like some of this, the Transformer fandom level is right there with all the other major fandom groups. So it's amazing that you got to achieve that level. Man. That's really, those are the stories I love. And you know, what I'm seeing also with a lot of the Star Wars people, the people who are making Star Wars now are Star Wars fans. The people who are involved
I was at
in
the
Transformers and these
a couple of weeks ago. Dave Filoni just walks in. I'm like, what? You know how hard it was to keep my mouth shut and sit there and wait to be called into my session when Dave Filoni's standing 4 feet away from me and not going, I was the voice of Captain Rex and some toys. I did Anakin Skywalker. And then never worked for Star Wars ever again. Right. And he looked over at me and I didn't know what he said. I had to literally block. He's like, I'm not going to get engaged. I'm not going to involve. He looked at me. I was like, that's all I did. I put my head back down. I was not going to be like, I know who you are. Because he was talking about how he got on a plane in New York at 4:30 a.m. Then they flew through the Santa Ana winds. And you're not in LA and you don't know California. Santa Ana winds are nightmares, especially for planes. Winds are blowing like 80 miles an hour. And they had to fly through that. And they'd just gotten there. And I was like, I'm not going to bug him. I'm just going to let him do his job.
That
was the worst time for me to make myself known to Dave Filoni.
So you're known for doing the honest trailers and the How It Should Have Ended.
Knowing Arms, they're still going. A lot of I'm in Animaniacs. I was in an episode of Muppets Mayhem. I'm in tons of games this year alone. I'm in Street Fighter 6. I'm in System Shock, Evil Dead game, New World, a bunch of Transformers mobile games, and Throne and Liberty. I think that one's out now. I'm not sure. And then there's a couple other ones. And Marvel Snap. I'm the announcer for Marvel Snap too. Oh, Snap. Apparently that's a pretty popular one. Man, if it's just half as popular as the number of ads I see from Marvel Snap every time I go online, it's they put the ads are working into their marketing, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, where I was going with this, is when you started doing the honest trailer stuff, it was a time when the internet was a little bit more fun,
as opposed to what it is now,
where you could. What I mean by that is, there's sort of this. There's poking fun in good fun at movie mistakes and things like that, and now there's a whole freaking YouTube business of people just being ripping movies apart.
We were OG, just saying.
Yeah, you did. And so what I'm,
people getting famous, man, just off of just talking about movies, and everybody treats them like they're freaking Siskel and Ebert or insert reference for movie critic here that you would know because I'm not old, but
Siskel and who now?
One of them's dead. That's how old they are. Rest in peace, man. I was not trying to be insensitive. That's just how old I am. It's a long time ago.
That's just how old I am and how old
now people like my buddy Straw Hat Goofy are just becoming like this quintessential fan critic. I don't know what else to call it. It's not a full. You're not an official, and they even say that. Like I'm just giving my thoughts on the freaking movies. I'm just a fan. They're the people that the audience score is based on Rotten Tomatoes. And the more people are listening to them because they're giving more honest reviews. They're not being bribed. They're not giving their stupid, no offense, but artsy fartsy thoughts on, blah, 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 blah. Is it a cool movie? Did you enjoy it? That's what we want to know. What cool things were in it? What crappy things will we not? Convince me to see or not to see. That's all. I get tired of critics' reviews because you can't trust them. Because what we learned from Rotten Tomatoes is people can buy their own freaking reviews and make their movie look better than it is. Trust the audience score. Do not trust the critic score.
Yeah, and even that, now with review bombing and things like that, it's so hard to. Or
just trailer reactions. There's so much dedicated to this, our thoughts and opinions on films, and we were just like, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Right. So when you started it, and literally, I point back to you guys all the time as that was, and it was done in good faith. It wasn't an attempt to either bring an agenda from
Right.
one side or another, or to beat somebody down, or if you didn't like something.
They try to be fair. And to be fair, I don't make them. Number one, this is a common misconception. Number one, I don't make them. Number two, I'm not the writer. Number three, it's not my channel. Number four, I'm just the voice talent, but I do improvs. I try to keep them on track. Like, for example, we did one and they had the name wrong. I'm like, hey, this is not this. This is it. They're like, oh, how do we miss that? I was like, I don't know. This is version 5 of the script. I thought you guys were nerds. So we just work together as a team to make it the best product we can. So we're always trying to constantly check each other, because we will get called out just as bad as anybody else if we make a mistake based on something, when we're like, oh, that was a wrong reference or wrong whatever. But we don't like nitpick the thing to death like Cinema Sins do, or just people who just do artsy fartsy boring, like, here's a movie, here's what happened. We're just more like, here's what if a movie trailer was telling you what this movie really was about, instead of promoting it for you to watch it and not talking about anything else other than that, here's what this movie would be about. And we're going to make references to things and do it in a comedic, funny way that's not too harsh and too cruel, but also is very entertaining, and a different way to do kind of a movie critique.
So between working with that team, being now in the business, do you find, I mean, obviously it would be a stupid question to say, do you look at movies differently? Because obviously you do, because you know so much about what's going on behind. But has that changed the way you enjoy the movies? Because as you were saying, you were a kid nerd, like a lot of us. Has it changed it in any way, or lessened it in any way, I guess is where I'm going, or made it better?
Two things have changed, but for two different reasons. One thing has changed because of what the work I do professionally. And then Honest Trailers being the second reason. But I was always the kid that was like, hey, that didn't, I was one that attached that was like, why did they, they're being quiet, but they're yelling, and they're literally one room away, and the bad guy doesn't hear them. Like, my brain has always thought that way. Honest Trailers only amplified that more. Now I can't help but Honest Trailer a thing in my head, because I know I'm going to eventually be working on this thing. So I'm getting a little ideas now just in case, but it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the film. It just affects it affects my focus. I can't just focus on the film and not constantly thinking that way. But then the ADR part of me is like, oh man, that's bad. I'll give you an example. People are going to hate me for this. I don't think that Killing of the Flower Moon was that great of a film. From a technical standpoint, there was a lot of bad mistakes with the ADR. The lip sync was off in multiple places. There was so many edits that was like, man, I can't believe, how did nobody see or hear this? Like, I feel like this is stuff that somebody with the screen right in front of them and headphones on while they're editing a film would notice. That's a really bad dub right there. We should fix this badly. That's what they mean by fix it in post, and they didn't fix it in post. And no offense, but when you're going for Best Picture, shouldn't you be better at that stuff? Yeah. So those two things, because I can instantly tell when something's been re-recorded or something's been changed, or that guy's voice is not even close to that guy's voice. We were watching a movie the other day, and the guy, the therapist person's on one side, and he did not. It was Killers of the Flower Moon. There was a doctor guy in there. His voice, you could tell his voice was not his voice at all. Like, they didn't even think about recording somebody in, adding room noise to make it sound like he's even in the same place. His voice sounded crystal clear, like it was in a movie studio or a recording studio, and then everybody else in the room sounded like they were in a freaking room. And it didn't match him at all. It sounded nothing like the way he looked. And I'm like, he must have been one of those guys like, so you guys, and they had to record him because his voice was, I don't know, but it was like, man, that's an obvious thing for me that I saw, not even Honest Trailering it, just noticing it from technical standpoints. Like, that was terrible, AD. Yeah, I kind of can't help it anymore. Like, I was watching Argo. At the very beginning of Argo, and the guy's like, and he's like, dude, that voice sounds nothing like, his mouth is moving to a completely different thing than the audio that came out.
Oh, wow.
I can't, once you do the job, you can't. And once I explain it to people, it's like, man, you shattered the glass ceiling or glass wall or whatever. Now I can't unsee it when I watch it. Or I'm thinking like, is that Jon's voice right there? I have versions for social media. I don't put any effort into sound-alikes on social media because I'm not getting paid for it, guys. If I was doing sound-alikes, you're going to have to pay me a hell of a lot more to do you a really good sound-alike, because I'm doing that in a professional studio setting, not on my front of my cell phone. But for views and for growing my social media following, that helps me get more jobs. Like that stuff, I'll just, whatever, especially on live streams, I'll be like, dude, Mickey Mouse. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Could you throw me any slower of a softball, please? Every once in a while, I'll give you a great example, though. I went to my kids' what voice was it he said he could do? No, I remember what it was. So I went to my kids. It was a kindergarten class. Kindergartners, by the way. And they had this thing called Star Student Week. And each day a different set of parents would come because that kid was Star Student of the Week. And they could have lunch with the kid at the lunchroom, and then they could go back to the class. And usually they'd have the parents read a book before they left. Well, I should never ask a voice actor to read a book. All of a sudden, they want me to read 50 books because I'm doing voices. Right. So they were like, do this voice and do that voice. And one kid, it was like, it was what you would expect. It was SpongeBob. And then one kid goes, Nicolas Cage. I'm like, that's my kid right there. I think I need to swap out mine for that one, because that one's like, yeah, freaking do a good one. I'm like, whoa, this kid really knows his stuff.
Oh, that's great. So you're getting voice requests from kids, and they're asking for Nicolas Cage.
Kindergartners. It's kind of nice when a kindergartner can ask me for a better request than most people on TikTok do. People want the basic stuff. They were like, can you do Scooby-Doo? Can you do Mickey Mouse? I'm like, come on, guys. I can do so much better than those. Anybody can do those.
So who's some of your favorites to do that?
Well, definitely not Stitch, Mickey Mouse, or anybody from Family Guy, because that's the number one things kids want to hear. My favorite voice has always been Optimus Prime's voice. And it's pretty equal with Ryan Reynolds' voice, just because that one makes everybody laugh and everybody smile. And even Ryan Reynolds likes my impression of him. And then I would say, that's hard to say, man. That's a good question, because there's so freaking many that I really love to do. But yeah, it's those two. But Keith, as far as favorite voices, I don't necessarily do, but I can do an impression of it. Keith David is my right there with Peter Cullen, best voice of all time.
And if you don't know who Keith David is, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Go watch a movie or literally anything. Play a video game. You're gonna hear Keith David.
So we'll turn a little bit back to Star Wars a little bit, but after you did the honest trailers for the Star Wars movies, did you look at them differently than you did when you were a little kid? After that?
Because they started their first one without me, by the way. I was not on the first couple of them, but it was for Phantom Menace. Mm-hmm. They didn't do the old movies yet, so even watching those, mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, we've watched them so many times. We already know every single.
Right. We know where the mistakes are. We know where the bodies are.
We love them because of their flaws, because it makes it feel more realistic to me. It's like when I got so excited when James Gunn got in there and he was like, oh, we're going to have all these practical effects. But then he just shoves them in your face and he leaves them on camera for a long time. So just in case you missed the practical effects that we spent so much time on and told you about, make sure you go back and see it. We put it this close to the screen so you could... I'm like, dude, did Lucas do that? No, he spent a lot of time and effort on effects that were there for half a second. Do you know how many action figures they had to go through scouring through the Mos Eisley Cantina to make action figures for? Because they were so well blended in, it just felt freaking real. It felt better then than it does now. Now it's just like, oh, these are the real ones, and these are the computer animated ones, and look how real these are. These are practical over here. Look at this. Look at this. I was like, if it's good, you shouldn't have to shine that big of a spotlight on it. For some reason, practical effects have gotten more fake looking. You'd think they would be better. The technology is supposed to advance, not go backward. How did Jim Henson do so much better a job?
Yeah, I remember actually reading an article during Return of the Jedi being filmed, and where Lucas said, because they built the whole sail barge for Jabba the Hutt, and he said, a lot of filmmakers fall in love with showing the effort that they put into creating the effects, and that's exactly what it is. And now it's set piece after set piece, and it's a little bit of
now they got this newfangled technology that George Lucas had imagined back in the day, basically building an LED set where the floor and the walls and everything is just you're there, and it makes it a very quick to make production. So you only have to make some set pieces, but it also kind of sucks, because you can tell that all that is not practical anymore. We kind of just know. And as cool as the technology is, I'm like, okay, why can't we combine technologies? Why can't you go out and film a practical set and then film the set? Film the whole freaking thing from every possible angle and then bring that into the digital stage. Separate your crews. Speed up production time. Then you don't have to have your actors out in the freaking desert or in the freaking freezing weather or anything like that, but it still looks freaking real because you really went out and did it. I don't know, whatever. I'm not a director. What do I know? We have such high expectations for Star Wars for some reason.
Yeah, well, they'll call you when they need somebody to do the voice. Don't you worry about how it looks. But
I'm just going to do the narcissistic thing. It's all Star Wars' fault. You're the one that started off setting the bar too high in the first place. What happens when you set the bar too high? When you first get married, you don't do a huge Valentine's Day the first year. No, you give them one box of chocolates. That when you see, because when you start up here, man, and when you do like rose petals and like there's flowers and you made your cake and there's like then the bar is there forever and you have to keep raising it forever. Way to go, Lucas. You started up here instead of bringing it down here with Buck Rogers.
Yeah, you're stuck. You will never make it. You'll never make anybody happy again.
It wouldn't have been as successful, but he did really start.
Right?
He raised the bar too high when he first made the film.
Oh my gosh. It's so fun. We just did a show the other night where we were talking about the shows and movies that were inspired by Star Wars, and we were watching little clips from them, and it's like, yeah, Lucas and Lucasfilm and our Industrial Light and Magic, they captured it, and then like the layers below, the steps below it were so far below and so hard to get to.
I don't understand. I watched the Toys That Made Us, and it made so much sense, but at the same time, I'm like, what was he thinking? Because he did all these things for the toy rights to get back from the whole thing was about toys.
Right.
And then he made Phantom Menace, and I'm like, dude, you didn't think making these things look cool would sell so many more toys? Instead, it backfired, and then he didn't sell nothing. They sat in shelves, and they went on huge discounts. I was like, man, this was your chance, dude, to make back all that freaking money that you lost with the Hasbro deal you got screwed with.
Oh, I have boxes of unopened Phantom Menace toys in my basement.
Trust me, there's billions of unopened Phantom Menace toys out there that nobody owns. Nobody wants to own them.
It's the Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of warehouse full.
I'm telling you, dude. In the post-apocalyptic Fallout or whatever we end up with at the end of time, there's going to be our surviving human race are going to stumble into an ET type thing where they're like, what in the world's going on here? Why are there so many unopened toys of the same movie? They're just going to be like the temple of the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where else there's nothing but just toys.
Endless rows and rows.
Endless. So, they have top people working on it. Top people.
Oh man, that's funny. All right, so we do this.
Then somebody's going to come along and be like, "These toys belong in a museum."
Now that's a movie concept.
And I shot first. Gosh darn it!
Funny. Oh man, talk about a guy whose voice has literally changed. So okay, as a voice guy, did you watch Dial of Destiny? I have to ask. Okay.
Yes.
The only thing that
all old white males watched Dial of Destiny.
I think we were obligated. I believe
we were the only ones that showed it.
It's very true.
40 plus olds were the only white people.
Are you 40 or over? Well, you have plans this weekend.
44.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you 40 or over? Then get ready for your dad's favorite film.
But so as it relates to voice.
But since he's dead, there's a chance for you to feel that nostalgia by going to see this movie and watching Indiana Jones run around on anything with wheels because he can't run. He can barely walk fast.
Oh man, that's funny. But I did have a question. Oh yeah.
Who needs writers? Just kidding. We love you, writers.
But did you notice, for me, like, I noticed Harrison's voice on the de-aged Harrison sounded like old Harrison, and that's the only reason the de-aging didn't work for me.
Yeah. Well, Lex Lang, buddy of mine, usually does Harrison Ford's voice for everything else. So he's been Lego, Han Solo, and tons of stuff. I kind of feel like they should have done that. How good was Grand Admiral Tarkin? Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
In Rogue One. Like, how great was that? I mean, if they'd done a little bit better with the deep fake technology, it would have been, that's Steven Stanton. Right. That's not a deep fake voice or AI voice or anything. That's Steven Stanton. And they did a really good job. Get a good sound alike, man. And Harrison Ford is not Harrison Ford anymore. He can't sound that way. If he tried, he couldn't. You couldn't put enough. You couldn't put a 1944 gun to his head and make him sound that way. It's not going to happen.
And I think that's the really important thing. It's not.
You got the Waltz P-38 to his head, and Indiana Jones cannot sound like a young man anymore because he doesn't have the Dial of Destiny. Every Indiana Jones Nazi all sounds the same.
They really do. They really do.
I am kind of glad they're like, finally, they brought some Nazis in.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I thought we were going to have to upgrade to Russians or something for the for the new movie because they're like, you're running out of communists.
Well, people had issues
in the games. It was China. It was like, oh, they're still communists. I guess that counts. They're bad guys.
Well, that's true. I mean, Crystal Skull had its issues, but if we break it down, it's probably because it was Russians and not Nazis. Otherwise, it would have been a great movie. movie.
Was Russian communist and not Nazi, not German communist.
You gotta get.
It all depends on what country they come from. It depends, they just, I don't know why people just still hold on that Germans are the best Nazis.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the German accent, you could.
Like, we was OGs.
You could say I love you in German and it sounds rough.
I apologize to everybody, the former military and all the families and everything else.
Epic voice guy
This
canceled.
is how I got canceled.
That's right. But hey, with a name like Fletcher, it's
about
German.
Indiana Jones.
I'm German, and so I'm allowed. Is that what the Seinfeld thing was? Yeah,
Okay,
right.
yeah, and I can make fat jokes because.
Oh man, John, this has been I haven't just laughed nonstop for an hour doing an interview in a while. This has been.
I saw your other interviewers.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I love all you people. I don't know most of you, but I was just joking.
But this was
These Jedi tricks don't work on me.
well. So where can people follow you so they can learn about these things as you're allowed to speak about them?
Epic Voice Guy. I'm all the major platforms. Epic Voice Guy. It's right down there.
So easy to find.
There, depending on where you can find my camera. No spaces, no ampersands, no hashtags, no 9x9 on each end, or there's not X Epic X Voice X Guy X, because this is not the 90s. It's just Epic Voice Guy. I'm not.
If you find Epic Voice Guy 96413, that is not.
Yeah, anything derivative that's not just straight up Epic Voice Guy and it does not have a check mark, ain't me. All right, cool. Okay.
Well, John, thank you so much, man. This was a ton of fun. I really had a great time talking to you. This was great.
Thank you so much, Pete, and may the force be with you always.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Thanks to Jon Bailey, and thanks to you for listening. If you had fun, please like, subscribe, share, rate, and review it. Make sure to join our Patreon program at theSSWnetwork.com by clicking Join SSWN. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast or at the SSW Network. This has been Copyright 2024, Pete in the Seat Studios. May the Force be with you.